Imagine a universe where your favourite science fiction intellectual properties all existed in the same, universe. A crossover conglomerate of wonder, a melting pot of ideas, interlinked within one stem. Jean-Luc Picard turns to Rick Deckard as he sips his Earl Grey tea.
Rick, I have a joke. What do you get if you cross a xenomorph with a predator? Huh? 2 shit films and a bag of money. Engage!
A few weeks ago, we made a video about the extended Blade Runner universe, the content beyond those 2 feature films. I also briefly touched on a few, let's call them non-official entries, that many people consider a legitimate part of the franchise. Most people know about the 1998 Kurt Russell film Soldier, which was written by David Peoples, who also co-wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner. Soldier features a few clear references to the Blade Runner universe, including a shot of a spinner, they're the flying cars in Blade Runner, and the mention of the Battle of Tannhauser Gate. These are obviously not coincidences. And of course, there is the theory that the Alien franchise is also set in the same reality as Blade Runner. This proposal has even more evidence than the Blade Runner theory, probably. Arthur K. Dallas, the captain of the Nostromo, that's the spaceship in Alien, used to work for the Tyrell Corporation, according to his profile seen on the screen. The concept, the evolution, maybe even the timeline of developing androids, replicants, simulacra, whatever you want to call them, does straddle both franchises rather snugly. And Ridley Scott, the director of both original films, has said many things like this over the years. There's almost like a connective tissue between all the stuff I went through on Alien into the environment of the Nostromo and people living within close proximity to people who still have earthbound connections, and here we have people on Earth. So almost this world could easily be the city that supports the crew that go out in Alien. So in other words, when the crew of Alien come back in, they might go into this place and go into a bar off the street near where Deckard lives. That's how I thought about it. If you go poking around on the internet, you'll find many more connections, Easter eggs and theories, and a hell of a lot of angry dorks who for some reason get extremely upset if you disagree with their version of the canon. And there's the word I was looking for, canon, which in this context refers to events that officially happened in a fictional universe. This used to be very simple to understand. Over here, there was canon, and over here, there was fan fiction and non-authorised content. And never the twain shall meet. But it's never that bloody simple, is it? Officially, so according to the canon, Blade Runner and Alien do not exist in the same universe, no matter what Ridley Scott says, and regardless of the connections that you can dig up on the DVD special features. If we explore just beyond that horizon, we have the Alien vs Predator films and comics, an official melding of 2 separate franchises, which is something that Blade Runner never achieved with Alien. And then the canon consultants get involved, which is a real job title, and state that Alien is one canon, Predator is another separate canon, and Alien vs Predator is a completely third separate canon which gets to choose which part of the other franchise's canons is allowed in this separate franchise to make a whole other canon. And best of all, sometimes the people in charge just change the canon. That part of the story that you've loved for the past 25 years, it never happened. We killed it. Here's the new, usually shittier version of the truth. Star Wars is probably the best example of this. Just after they paid over $4 billion for Lucasfilm in 2012, they restructured the canon and declared that all of the films, past and future, will remain canon, but they kind of wanted a clean slate when it came to the books. There are hundreds and hundreds of Star Wars novels, fleshing out the background to the universe seen in the films. Pretty much every single character has their own arc, and we fill in the gaps of the history. It resembled the sprawling chaos of a comic book universe like Marvel or DC, where it's practically impossible to keep track of the true timeline, and it's also full of plot holes and inconsistencies. The solution, or the marketing strategy, was to declare that anything written before 2014 was now to be housed under the Star Wars Legends banner, not canon. And almost all of the new books, comics, video games and TV shows would join the 11 feature films. I think there's 11. Is there 11? I can't be bothered to check. And this would make up the new canon. Now, I can get on board with the proprietors of these stories wanting to tidy things up a bit. You may as well have a canon for those that want or need it. However, this doesn't take into account the subjective reality that every reader or viewer of a franchise experiences. This is called the headcanon, and I use it all the time. I bend the official version of an intellectual property depending on how much I know about it or care about it. For Star Wars, I'll keep those original 3 films. I'll use a bit of the information from the prequel trilogy. Give me Rogue One, a bit of Mandalorian and the Clone Wars. Thank you. I don't really care for the other Kathleen Kennedy era films, and I absolutely loved the original Timothy Zahn Thrawn trilogy books, which continues the story right after Return of the Jedi, and I'll probably never read the new books. So my headcanon Star Wars timeline is a patchwork of legends and canon. Back to Blade Runner and Alien, I'll stick with Blade Runner being separate from everything else. The references are just production Easter eggs. The MCU finishes at Endgame. Star Trek is mostly a blurry mess to me, apart from Deep Space Nine, and the Matrix series only has one film. The Matrix. Greetings from the future. These videos take a lot of time and effort and a little bit of money to make. Money which we don't have. You can watch all of our videos for free on YouTube, or if you would like to support the channel, you can use Buy Me a Coffee, which is an online tipping service. Get yourself a t-shirt or a mug or some socks at the merch store. But best of all, we have a Patreon. You'll gain access to our exclusive Discord, home of the world's greatest read-alongs, the podcast Radio Death Cult, and of course, you can tell your friends and family that you've joined a death cult. Links in the description and on our YouTube homepage. Thank you so much. I thought I had a cunning plan. I was going to take us on a journey through the communal, collective, rebel-hearted headcanon in the sky. Together we would discover just how far this multiverse stretches and how tenuous or robust the web of connections really are. We would start with what we already choose to know, which is that Blade Runner, Alien and Predator all exist in the same headcanon universe. Firefly joins the party due to the logo of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, which is the company in Aliens, showing up in episode 1. Remember that connection. It will be very important later on. Loads of people left comments on that other video suggesting other properties that may share a link. I've always considered Outland, the Sean Connery sci-fi film, a Blade Runner-verse film. I always considered Outland to be in the same universe as The Expanse. R2-D2 and C-3PO are in Indiana Jones as hieroglyphs. The Blade Runner spinner is also in Star Wars Episode 1. A Cyberdyne Terminator patch can be seen on a hazmat suit in Prometheus. If you want a secret prequel to Blade Runner in movie form, watch Black Rain. Alien, Soldier, Demolition Man, Johnny Mnemonic and Brazil are all in the Blade Runner universe. Yes, we may or may not agree, but in my headcanon, The Man in the High Castle is the prequel to Electric Sheep. I was under the impression that Jean-Luc Godard's 1965 film Alphaville was a prequel to Blade Runner. I love this channel. He loves this channel. Well, this is great. We can have a lot of fun joining the dots between all the things that we love, and then we can just argue about how it doesn't really make that much sense if you think about it too much. I wonder if anyone has ever bothered to gather all of these connections together before. Maybe I can make a name for myself and produce a video about this unmapped network of wonder. Well, this is embarrassing. Even if I was the first person to put this little project together, it pales in comparison to what I stumbled across during my research. This is the Tommy Westphall universe, an ever-growing network of TV shows that are all connected in some way. Tommy Westphall was a character in the American hospital drama St. Elsewhere, which ran from 1982 to 1988 and starred, among others, a very young, very delicious Denzel Washington. This is how it works. St. Elsewhere has 13 direct connections to other TV shows, which is usually a character from the show appearing in another TV show as that same character. Meaning Homicide: Life on the Street, Chicago Hope, Degrassi Junior High, MASH and Cheers all exist in the same fictional universe as St. Elsewhere, similar to how Blade Runner, Alien and Predator exist in the same headcanon universe. You then take those 13 connected TV shows and have a look at what other TV shows they're also connected to. Cheers is connected to Frasier, of course, which had a crossover with Caroline and the City, which featured a cameo by Chandler Bing from Friends, which had a guest appearance from two characters from Mad About You, which then connect to Seinfeld, and so on. Here's another fun chain of crossovers. St. Elsewhere, Homicide: Life on the Street, The X-Files, Beverly Hills 90210, Nash Bridges, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dexter. The whole map currently contains over 600 shows, with more connections being discovered and new shows being made and adding to the branches all the time. You're probably thinking, wow, that's really cool. But obviously, if you pick any of the shows on the map, because they're all connected, they'll all have the same amount of connections and you don't need St. Elsewhere for it to work. And who the hell is Tommy Westphall? In the closing scene of the final episode of St. Elsewhere, Tommy Westphall, a character depicting a boy with autism, is seen playing with a snow globe. Inside the snow globe is a model of the hospital, the setting of the show. The dialogue from Tommy's father in that final scene is like, all he does is stare at that snow globe all day long. I wonder what's inside his head. Zoom into the snow globe. This evidently implies that the entire show, apart from these couple of minutes right at the very end, all 137 episodes was taking place inside the mind of Tommy Westphall. The outward appearance of this autistic kid is one of very little interaction with the wider world. But inside, he's created a drama with all the flavours and emotion that the world can offer. Therefore, if St. Elsewhere is a figment of Tommy's imagination, all of the connections from Cheers to Doctor Who to My Name is Earl to Breaking Bad to Twin Peaks, over 600 of them must also be in that snow globe, in the mind of an autistic child. But wait, there's more. I've read the extended theory that proposes, because we can link real world people to this web of connections, then our version of reality must also be taking place inside the mind of Tommy Westphal. Just one example is Mary Tyler Moore. The real life Mary Tyler Moore appears as herself in a couple of the shows, making our reality just one bubble in this multiverse. Paradoxically, of course, Saint Elsewhere was created in our reality in the first place, but that's no more paradoxical than the Terminator travelling back through time and then leaving behind the technology that then led to the scientist making the technology that eventually became the Terminator, but then in the future that Terminator came back and left its arm which held the technology, which then became Skynet, which then became the Terminator technology, which they then sent back into the past to destroy what then became Skynet, but then left behind the chip that then became the Terminator, which was then sent back through time and then became the technology that became the arm of the Terminator, which came back through time, which dropped the chip to become the arm of the Terminator in the future, which then built the Terminator, which then sent back through time the arm which was made out of the technology which was from the future, which it sent back through time to become the chip in the arm of the Terminator, which then in the future was sent back through time, and then it left behind a chip which then became the technology which built the Terminators in the first place, which in the future sent back a Terminator which then left its chip behind from its arm, which then became the technology which became the Terminators in the future, which then sent back a chip in the arm of the Terminator through time, which was then left behind and became the technology which then became the Terminator, which then went back through time to be the Terminator. It's a shame I can't find a connection between our little Blade Runner, Alien, Predator universe and Tommy Westphal's imagination, because that would be one of the greatest accomplishments in YouTube history. Hold my beer, motherfuckers. Saint Elsewhere, Cheers, Frasier, The John Larroquette Show, Star Trek The Next Generation, and Firefly. As we've already illustrated, Firefly connects to Aliens, which connects to Blade Runner, which is an adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was written by Philip K. Dick. Dick was a believer, or maybe a meta-advocate for the many worlds theory, layers of reality existing concurrently, but more importantly, the notion that everybody has their own subjective reality experience, the ultimate headcanon, the personal snow globe. He also wrote a lot about the Gnostic entity, the Godhead, something that looms over us all but is misunderstood, incomprehensible to us mere mortals. Tommy is that God. I'm proposing that the Tommy Westphal theory is not just a pattern that emerged from the zeitgeist, a quirky network that contains over 90% of the TV shows we've ever made. I'm suggesting that we may have found the DNA of all speculative, drama, entertainment, information and reality hiding in the corridors of a fictional Boston hospital.